Morning. Very beginning of Genesis, here, creation account. I think the most important thing that we can glean from this first half of the creation account is the clear and scientific proof that the earth is flat. Not flat in the sense like that it's just this like flat, but it's like domes. But I'm not going to get into that now because I don't want you guys to think I'm some sort of kook. As much as I want to be a flat earther, I just can't do it because I believe we went to space and we went to the moon, and it doesn't work if the earth is flat. Today's the feast day of Saint Scholastica, who's the sister of Saint Benedict of Nursia. Saint Benedict kind of established the monastic tradition in the West in the 5th century or so, and then his sister, Saint Scholastica, followed him and began the monastic tradition for women. This past weekend, I talked about how there are some that are called to that radical life of leaving everything behind and living a life of asceticism and living a life where truly we set ourselves apart from the world and we pray for the world and we do penances. But the vast majority of us are called to live in the world and to use what we have in the world to better proclaim the gospel, while also denying ourselves and getting rid of the things that prevent us from doing God's will. So Saint Benedict and Saint Scholastica really are these wonderful models for us. The motto of the Benedictines is ora et labora, pray and work. And so there's this balance. It's not just praying. It's not just going off and sitting in the church all day long and just constantly in prayer, but it's also not just going out and doing. It's not just toil. It's not constantly trying to solve problems, to do the works of mercy, but it's a both and, because the work can be prayer, right? The work that we do can be something that is prayerful. There's a lot of talk, of course, of kind of, what's the responsibility of caring for those in need, of caring for the poor. And we can say, well, as Christians, we care for the poor because we recognize Christ in the poor, and we desire to be near Christ. Others could say, well, we help the poor because they're poor and we don't want them to be poor anymore. That's kind of a secular understanding of it, not a Christian understanding. Rather, we look and we say, no, we see Christ, and so we desire to care for Christ. We desire to minister to Christ. We desire to encounter and experience Christ so that we may be transformed and so that others may also see the work of Christ among us. Now, that can be done in many different ways. There's many ways that we can talk about that. But the most important is, like, what do I do? We talk about subsidiarity, the lowest level. What can I do to alleviate somebody's suffering? What can I do in my own life to alleviate someone's suffering? Yeah, I can write a check and send it off to some NGO, or I can say, well, maybe the church will do it, or I can say, well, the government should do it. But in reality, what can I do? What can I do to alleviate somebody's suffering? That's the first and most important question when we talk about this subject. And when we look at the example of Saint Scholastica and her brother Saint Benedict, we see this understanding of work and prayer united together. That my work to alleviate suffering is a work of prayer. It's not to alleviate suffering because suffering is bad, but rather it's to alleviate suffering so that we can understand the purpose of suffering. We cannot completely eradicate suffering. We can't completely eradicate poverty. When people talk about that, I often say you're trying to eradicate Christ because Christ was poor, Christ suffered. And so we cannot completely eradicate those things. So the example of Saint Scholastica, of prayer, of work, of striving to lead others closer to Christ through our actions, through what we do, and in uniting both the worldly, the work, and the spiritual, the prayer. Making sure that those things are always together, not that we separate them out and say, okay, now I'm going to do my prayer, now I'm going to do my work. No, the two are united as one. And so on this feast day, let us ask for her intercession that we may continue to recognize the ability to meet God in our work, and also recognize that our prayer is what gives purpose to the work that we do.